Welcome to our live stream show for Australian women speakers, where we showcase some of the amazing women speakers that we have in our group. You'll also get to see the huge amount of talent that's out there, so we can shift the stats from 30% to 50%, and no excuses about I can't find a woman to speak on my stage. So, Deepa Mani, I'm so excited to have you as my guest today. I should have said money. I love it that it's money, money, money. So, welcome.
Thank you, Jules. Thank you so much for having me. It's a lovely
My
opportunity.
absolute pleasure. So, let's start off by talking about what it is that you do, what you like to talk about.
So I am an IT expert turned into an entrepreneur.
Right.
And I run two companies, two businesses. One is a Indian classical and modern contemporary dance school in Melbourne here.
Right.
And I'm also just about to launch my second business, which is called POC Beauty. It stands for Proud of Color Beauty, which is a skincare, an Australian-made skincare and cosmetic brand that targets the problems that we brown people or people of color face every day.
Yeah, well, I am absolutely delighted that you're doing that. I can't believe that there isn't makeup out there for you. So I'm delighted that you're starting the new brand as well.
Yes.
So talk to me about what you like to actually talk about on stages.
So I focus, and I'd love to focus on topics around multiculturalism,
Excellent.
diversity and inclusion in not just in the art space, but also in the entrepreneurial space. And because I have a transformation background, a business transformation background through my IT side, I also like to talk about how to manage across cultures, particularly when you're in different roles. And my passion is really about driving diversity driving innovation in both the arts and the business world.
Oh my God, I love it. We need loads of you up there on stages, getting people to actually think about what they're doing. So have you got an actual sort of topic that you talk about? Have you got a name, or is it you're tailoring it for each one as it comes out or as you get booked?
So I generally tailor it. So for example, there's a topic that I'm going to do in the next month about creating your own identity in the entrepreneurial space. So how do you go about creating your self-identity when you start a business? And what are some of the things that people need to keep in mind and the challenges that are faced? So that's a very, very specific topic. And I also talk about how to navigate in the business world being a person of color. The other topic that I always get requested is how do you start a small business and what are some of the elements that people need to know in order to start a business.
Oh my God, every single one of those is perfect. And obviously, I really love it about people building an identity and raising a bit of profile if they're going to be an entrepreneur. So, if you do those topics, can you give me an idea of what kind of audiences you like? Not only size, but any particular industries or types of people that you like to speak to?
So I'm quite flexible and I thrive in both environments. So I like to go into deeper conversations in a very intimate setting, as well as a broader audience, which will help enable to create a broader impact. And the industries, I'm quite flexible. I like to talk to anybody in the arts.
Yep.
Who wants to pursue art seriously, who wants to pursue art as a secondary area. I'm very keen to talk to people of color entrepreneurs who are really, just on the fence thinking about whether I should go ahead or not. And it's important to have the conversation to sort of kickstart your journey. And I'd like to have conversations in the diversity and inclusion space. So any communities, multicultural communities who want to have a speaker in the D&I space, I'm happy to have that. And my main focus is on women,
Yep.
people of color, and multicultural communities.
Fantastic. So diversity, diversity, diversity. And I know that when I run my events, I often talk about how if as women we find it difficult to get cut through and get funding, that women of color, women who are of different abilities, and a lot of the minority groups have it like 10 times harder.
Yeah.
So really my jam is to try and get those of us that have the privilege of being, you know, Anglo-Saxon or whatever, to help lift up those women, because, you know, if we're finding it hard to find opportunities, then it's, you know, twice as hard. And it's really for us as women, I think, to help our sisters to get up on those stages too and make that change happen that we so badly
It's an
want.
absolute good. Yes, 100%.
Yes. What about sizes of audiences, Deepa? Do you like smaller groups, larger groups?
I've done both. I've done a very intimate setting of about 10 or 20 people versus a staged space where we have like a bunch of 100 people. I'm quite comfortable in both settings.
And do you have a sweet spot? So, I mean, I'm sure that you could do it, but do you have a preference for what sort of size you like?
Small to medium, I think, would be really good, particularly on the topics, because it really has to, you know, people need time with the speaker to ask questions.
Yeah.
And that time is very important. And sometimes a larger audience, you can get a little, you're very time bounded, and because of the events.
Yeah.
So I think small to medium would be a good starting point. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like those kind of intimate where you can maybe have a more profound effect because you are able to talk to them. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you've got to where you are and speaking on stages.
So I have about 30 plus years experience in the IT industry.
Oh my God, 30 years in IT. You must have been one of the only women in the early days. I mean, it's only 20% women now, isn't it?
I started way back in 2000, 3 or 2?
Right. Wow. Very early days.
You know, when the recession hit. So it's been a very interesting journey. Have had multiple experiences in different industries, from superannuation to management consulting to finance.
In what kind of roles? In sort of just management roles, or?
Yeah, management roles, mid to senior level management, running business transformation projects, taking care of larger teams like 30 to 50 was one of my largest ones. Wow. And then I left that in 2008. I left the full-time, working that 9 to 5 or 9 to 9, so to speak, in 2008.
Which is the GFC, wasn't it? Because that's when I started Handle Your Own PR around then. Is that what prompted you?
Sorry, 2018.
Oh, 18. Okay.
18. So that's when I started.
Just before the lockdowns.
Yeah. Just before the lockdowns. Yeah. So that's when I started my dance school, because I always had dance as a string all along the way.
Right.
And about 30 years experience in that, performing in different continents and learning. And so I wanted to start a school to start to impart this beautiful art form in a multicultural society like Australia.
Yeah.
But I also wanted the school to not just be one other school, but I wanted it to be a place where people can come to and feel safe and to express themselves through the art form, as well as have a more diversifying experience to go to other schools and venues to sort of impart that cultural.
Okay. So they're performing all over the place, or are you?
Yeah, and we also do commissions with organizations on creative projects. So we've done one called Touch, which actually blends Indian classical art form as well as ballet, to talk about the diversity factor there. And the unconscious bias that runs in all of our minds, and how we can break through that barrier. So that's really good, because I've really diversified in my business, Chandralya. Yeah. And then as an addition to that, I've always been in that wellness space, thanks to being in the arts, because beauty starts inside out. And when you're learning a classical art form, whether it's ballet or jazz or tap or Bharatanatyam, which I do, I think it's important that we dancers start to look at ourselves from the inside out and start to take care of ourselves.
Oh, I love that.
That's when I realized there's a huge gap in the market, particularly in Australia. Like United States and UK are doing pretty well, but Australia is still taking the backseat of really providing that environment in the beauty space, and catering for everyone. And with a population of 26 million people of color are nearly about 20% of the population and growing, which is
Gosh, really only 20%. I would have thought it was much higher, actually.
it is getting higher. I'm
Yeah.
talking about 2022 stats, and now we're 2024. We are the doors are open in terms of immigration, and so there's a lot of injection of cultural identities coming from everywhere. So it is growing. It's going to be growing for the next 20 years. If we look around, we can see the diversity factor there, and I think it's important that they have a space. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, person of color, I find it very hard to match a lot of products for myself because we have such unique needs because of the melanin percentage in our skin. And so I started POC, which technically stands for people of color, but I've turned it to say proud of color beauty.
And I love that. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny, isn't it? I mean, God, I lived in London in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we had loads of, I remember Bobbi Brown came out with her makeup. She must have been one of the first, but that's nearly 30 years ago. Like, why Australia is so behind in terms of equality for everyone. I mean, you know, I recently found the stat that we're only 43rd in the world for gender equality. So I hate to think what we're like for diversity and inclusion equality. But anyway, I guess all we can do is agitate and keep drawing attention to it.
I think ever since we came out of COVID, there's been such a hike in sentiment, and I think it's only going to get better. And I always think about the next generation. I hope 10 to 15 years from now, the kids who are growing up don't have to worry about this, and it becomes a very default situation. It's not that we have to share, we have to come in and take a seat at the table. The seat's actually given to you because you belong.
Yeah.
And so, so that's what I'm doing. So I manage both my businesses, and I also get called to speak in different events, and, very grateful.
Yeah, well, I mean, you sound like an amazing speaker. So let's go back to the speaking. How do you find your gigs, Deepa? How are you getting those opportunities at the moment?
I think it's mainly through networking, and
asking. I mean, are you asking and reaching out to people to say, 100%. Can I speak?
100%. I think we're it's like ask and you shall receive policy.
Yeah.
And I think it's first setting the tone and then building your identity through the different social channels, which I'm still doing. Yeah. And I think people, and when you go to events and people get to see you and meet you and understand what you have to offer, and then you start to have a conversation, and then collaboration starts from there. Yeah. I am very, very big on collaboration, and I think anything that we can do to bring people together under one roof to have meaningful, profound, impactful conversations, I'm up for it any day.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's interesting. I just find it interesting to find out how people are getting the gigs. But a lot of it, I think, is also people in the audience who will see you speak and then refer you. So the more you can get on stages, the more likely you are to get more opportunities as well.
Yeah.
So, if I was in the audience for one of your talks, what would be, say, 2 of the key takeaways that people would walk away from, or that I might walk away from after watching you speak?
I think for starters, particularly in the entrepreneur space, they would take an audience from who wants to start something on their own will take some tools how to navigate the change.
Okay, can you give me an example? Give us an example of one of the tools you might tell them about.
So I would be talking about, and I always talk about this, the tool of manifestation. I would talk to them about how to go about doing that. And as a result of that, what are the steps to follow in order to get yourself out there and be visible to people? And then when you look back in a month, you would have actually checked off a small list that you prepared. So that's a starting point for me. I would give them a skeleton of what are some of the areas to focus on while thinking of starting a business, and how to sort of crack the egg in a reasonably smaller time frame and not be the perfectionist
Yeah.
that we all tend to be. So that's I tend to give quite a few tips while talking, because I think it's important that people do have some takeaways when they leave.
Actionable, something they can do, I think is
And they feel that it's that the topic has been relevant to them, and it's actually they've got something out of it. The other thing is, I talk about in the arts sector, I talk about how the stories of resilience and how being in a diverse environment helps to navigate the barriers and the issues and the challenges that we face. And I also did that in the work environment, particularly if anybody is in a transformation space, and if you're dealing with multiple ethnic groups in a work environment, how do you sort of navigate your everyday life in having those conversations? And that, I think that's just coming out of pure experience that I've had. And they would take away some tools of how to address the people when they talk to them about change, because change, in my experience, people in transformation always suffer from change fatigue.
Yeah.
And it's important.
And I would think in large organizations, a lot of them would as well.
Yeah, particularly if you're going through a restructure every 12 months, it's not an easy thing to navigate. And so I would talk to them about it and how to sort of help to ease themselves into that. Thereby, they also create that eased environment for the other person to deal with.
And so, speaking more to the management level or the middle management level than the workers, I guess, for a better want of a better way of putting it.
Yeah,
you're talking about how they can manage down, I guess.
Absolutely, and also manage up and sideways.
Yeah, I love it. So, have you had any memorable speaking experiences that you can share with us? Either from, I don't know, whether it's been an amazing place or something happened along the way, or maybe somebody contacted you afterwards and gave you some feedback about how it affected them.
So there's a couple, and I've done quite a few podcasts, and people have always come back to me and said that I've been listening to your podcast on a couple of times, because some of the messages that you're telling me is quite resonant, and it's important to listen to it a couple of times, which I think is an absolute compliment that I'm doing.
It absolutely is. That's amazing.
And the recent one is I was featured in a entrepreneurial journey for migrant founders documentary called Visible Founders, and we had a panel after the premiere, which I think really highlighted the unique journeys and challenges we face as founders from diverse backgrounds. And it was very powerful to see such stories of resilience and innovation that resonated with the audience, and it sort of sparked so much meaningful discussions about diversity in the business space. And I think every one of them took away that, I could be there.
Yeah.
And that was such a powerful impact that you could create as a speaker onto the audience. And I think that I left that space in being very inspired by the impact of my voice and my panel's voice.
I'm so pleased.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and where was that? Was that a big group, a small group? Where was that?
There was probably about 100 people from after the premiere of the documentary, which was held in Melbourne. Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, I love what it is that you're doing. And then, okay, tell me another story. I love stories, and we've got plenty of time. So
I've actually, I'm just going to talk in a couple of weeks, I think in maybe mid-November. So I was very grateful again. I was awarded the Glen Ira 2024 Business Award for Diversity and Inclusion.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. And I was, and I've been called to speak as part of the panel about. It's very, very. I forget the name of the topic, but it's about really the challenges of business and how to sort of thrive and survive. Addressing those challenges. Yeah.
And particularly if you're a diverse business owner, or is it more across the board? Because Glen Ira, I wouldn't have thought, had a massive community of people of colour. I mean,
you'll be surprised.
I know, I would be.
Glen Ira in so many years ago versus now, it's so different. And we have such, we have huge pockets of different ethnic groups, and it's actually coming. Yeah, it's coming from both a person of color perspective, a woman in a diverse space, as well as as an entrepreneur.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that. I love Glenara. I know I did some talks for them around PR 100 million years ago, but it wasn't particularly diverse then. But I live in the inner west of Melbourne, where it's incredibly diverse. So maybe I'm just comparing as well.
West is very diverse. I completely agree with you.
Okay, now I'm going to put you completely on the spot and go, have you got a favorite talk that you've done? As in, can you think of one? Obviously, I would say that the first one you told us about where you walked away feeling really a profound effect is probably one of them. But have you got a favorite that you can think of? Have you talked overseas, for instance?
No, I have not. I'm manifesting that one day.
Yeah, me too. I want to go over to India, so maybe we can high five when we get on a stage over there.
100%, yes.
So any that stands out that you've done so far, though?
I think it's the Visible Founders was one which I mentioned.
Yes.
And I've done a couple of podcasts, which was I thought was very, very inspiring that they invited me to talk.
Okay.
There was one of them is a Fruitful Entrepreneurs, which is a podcast about again diverse entrepreneur in the diversity space.
Yeah.
And then there was a little very, very intimate gathering. Again, it was a diverse audience about the Indian Independence Day. And and how does it feel to be a migrant in Australia, and and talk about my experience. And I think that was it was like talking to my people and helping them to come on board this way, and sort of pushing them. And I felt very touched that I was asked to speak in that. Yeah. And I've got another one coming up actually in November at the Future Founders Festival.
Interesting. Yeah.
Which is run by Start Space, and that's on how to promote yourself, as an entrepreneur and create your profile and identity. I think that's I'm very grateful.
Oh my God, I love your topics, Deepa. I just love what you're trying to do. It sounds so inspirational. It's so needed.
Thank you.
I'm sitting there all the time banging on about the number of women, but really, I was speaking, I'm going to be interviewing him shortly, the guy who runs TEDx in Melbourne.
Ooh,
and he was telling me that less than 2% of speakers are Asian. And I was like, are you kidding me? When we have this massive community. So we were talking about unconscious bias before. I think there's a lot of us that don't even realize, or a lot of people that don't think. I did another post this week about the Leadership Institute doing a panel about women in sport and only having 3 women and 6 guys. It's the same thing. I think you don't see it until someone points it out. So we need you, and we need other people to be pointing it out and talking to us about how to navigate that better.
Oh, thank you. We need you, Jules, because if the first wasn't there, it's hard for women, or women of any ethnicity, to put ourselves out there and to have Australian women speakers as a place to actually put our profile and actually, put ourselves out there I think is such a great opportunity, because just as to your point, they don't know that we all exist.
No.
And it's important that...
well, they do. They must know, because I know that there's thousands of them, but I cannot believe that in 3 months, I think 2,500 women gathered on Facebook and LinkedIn. And I was like, whoa, that is much more powerful of an issue than I had ever thought it was. I just thought that we needed to get together, but we don't. And then I discovered only last week that only 15% of panels feature women. I was like,
yes, that's right.
Oh my God, the stats get worse and worse every time we look. All right. So Deepa, obviously, if people want to get hold of you, they can go to womenspeakers.com.au. Yep. Where else can they go? What's the best way to get hold of you? Do you have a website that you want to share?
Yes, so they can definitely get me on AWS, and they can DM me on LinkedIn. My profile. Sometimes people do reach out through my businesses, which is Chandralaya Dance, at Chandralaya Dance, and sometimes they even DM me on Instagram or Facebook. But it's usually they send me an email. So yeah, I think two main things would be LinkedIn and AWS. They can get me directly.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much for sharing. I hope that you haven't been able to hear all the digging going on next door.
No, not at all.
But I have absolutely loved interviewing you. I can't wait to share your story. And I just quickly want to say that if you enjoyed this, we have a show every Thursday at 10 a.m. where we're featuring one of the women speakers. If you need a speaker for your event, please go to womenspeakers.com.au. You don't have to pay a commission. You can contact the speaker directly and negotiate with them directly, and you can search by topic and location. And we've got over 70 women in there and hopefully growing all the time. Also, we have the Facebook group and the LinkedIn group for Australian women speakers. You are very welcome to go in there and do a post if you want people to respond. I saw somebody did one and it had 79 responses, so I wonder whether that was a bit of overkill, but you certainly will find plenty to choose from. And if you are a woman speaker and you want to be found, please go to the womenspeakers.com.au directory and get yourself a listing. And hopefully next year we're really going to ramp this up and get a lot more eyeballs on it. So, but I really appreciate people like you, Deepa, that have supported me from the start. So thank you very, very much. And I can't wait to share your story.
Thank you so much, Jules. You're doing a wonderful job. Keep going, and we're supporting you.
Thank you.